We've been developing a sophisticated particle that's going to help contribute to a very nice kind of fiery black smoke effect we've got going on. We're fine-tuning the animation now of the particle itself. We just got done working with the opacity by having an animated layer effect for our explosion.png. I'll click OK. I'm going to move my timeline marker down here to somewhere right at 24. And I'm going to do a render. Now, if I move to the smoke particle emitter, we'll see that we've got all this stuff going up. If I choose just the individual layers, I won't see any of that. So with the particle layer selected, we'll do a quick render. And we shortened up the distance we have with our color here, and we also have the darkness happening a little bit sooner. I think I want it a little bit sooner still. Let me come down to our color here. You can see we've got this gray here, and this is black, so I'm simply going to bring this together here. So we get a fairly quick transition into this. Let's see. Another test render real fast. There, I like this darkness that's happening. And then it's fading out the higher we go thanks to the layer transparency. Okay, getting a nice look going on right here. Let me delete that. What we will do now is highlight this layer and duplicate it. It auto increments to explosion 1, but now space and then 2. I'm going to quickly here go ahead and turn off the masking effects right here by double clicking on this layer. And the reason I'm doing that is to make sure the mask resets correctly when I go ahead and bring in a new image. So I'll say no masking this layer and OK. I'm going to look at the explosion here. I've got this changing over 48 frames. I'll do the same thing with the new one that's coming in. This layer is selected. I'll choose new image. And actually, before I do that, let me go back to time frame 1. That's where all the good stuff happens and you build your scene. Okay, didn't want layers appearing and disappearing by bringing that in at a later time. Let's go ahead and bring in a new image. This will be explosion2.png. Again, another pixel-based file. Let me keep that right there. I'm going to shrink this down fairly small because we'll be changing the size. Now on explosion 1, I'm going to delete that from that layer. This allows for two different particle layers to interact with each other and have different types of animation. And we could actually continue duplicating these if we wanted. But on this layer right here, I'm going to double click on explosion 2, allow animated layer effects. Let me pull this over just a little bit. I'll advance 1 frame and we will animate the opacity now. I'll go ahead and say 0, apply. Let me make sure animated layer effects is on and apply here. We'll step forward 1 frame. Okay, let me go down to say frame 6 and we'll do 100. Choose apply. There's our keyframe. Let me go ahead and come back here to frame 1. It was taking, but it didn't look like it. That's kind of odd. Let me go ahead and change this to 0. Choose apply there. There's our keyframe. And then we'll fade it out at about 48 like we've done with the other one. And choose 0 again. So we've got the opacity fading in and out now. If I stop the mouse right here, I'll see it at 94. That's great. Let's choose OK. The other thing I want to do is spin this the opposite direction. I've got the layer tool selected. I'm going to click once, which enters that information into the keyframe editor. And I want this at frame 48 to be rotating counterclockwise this time. So let me zoom in a little bit so I can get that little rotation tool. There we go. And I'll rotate this gently the other direction. Now, everything else is the same. The color changes, all of that stuff. So when we come back to the smoke layer, let me back out. We're getting these big blobular things, and it's because I need to re-engage the mask for that top layer. So masking, hide all. OK. That looks good. Let's check out our smoke layer. Now we'll go ahead and do a quick test render to check that out. There, so we're getting some nice looks. Now, this is very photographic, and it may be a little too crisp. So one of the ways we can edit that now is come up to the top smoke layer here, double click on it, and what I'll do is give this a little bit of blur. This is going to soften some of those edges. I'll choose a value of 2, just kind of pulling that number out of thin air, and choose OK. And let's just move this around a little bit. And we'll go ahead and do another test render. Now this is softening it up. That's kind of nice. We've got some spaces here. Well, now that our animation is pretty well complete, let's go ahead on the particle layer, open this up again, go to particles, and instead of 20, let's go ahead and give this something more like 50. And choose apply and OK. We'll go ahead and do a quick little test render. It thinks about it more because there's more particles. This is starting to look a little bit better. This is an abrupt change. I might want to even that out and experiment a little bit with that. But what we have now is a particle emitter that will continue to go until we right-click on it and ask it to turn off. So that's a very nice little function. It may be a little too blurry. It's one of these things we could spend another 10 minutes tweaking. But you see how we put this together. Import an item, in this case an image. We go ahead and mask it inside of its own group, animate color over time, animate opacity and rotation for each one of these sprites that we have in here, and then adjust how it's deployed by the particle emitter itself.